variety of mystery religions existed in the ancient world, such as the mysteries of Demeter, Eleusis, and Mithras, and Orpheus. Now, think about that, Orpheus. Who do you have in the Matrix movies? Morpheus. You see where they pull from? They pull a lot of this from the ancient texts and tablets and ancient stories. Initiates underwent a number of secret rituals to join these cults, swearing oaths to keep the proceedings secret, and as a result, the substance of their beliefs and the nature of their ritual has been almost lost entirely. We are a species with amnesia, just like the famous Graham Hancock would say. We literally have forgotten a lot of this ancient spiritual technology, and I hope to bring some of it back to you today and give you an understanding of how it works. The Force is absolutely real. The Force in Star Wars that they talk about, this is this energy force, and the Force is yin and it's also yang. There's good energy in the Force and there's bad energy in the Force. So the Force is, I should say, let me rephrase that. There's energy of the Force that exists because we're all on the grid, and you can utilize that Force for good, and you can also utilize the Force for bad. That's how I should actually rephrase it for you. The energy is there, and it's based off of your conscious intent, and how you manipulate it is the direction that you take it in, okay? The day science begins to understand non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. That's Nikola Tesla. So we're talking about invisible phenomena. We're talking about the unseen. Because why? Because human eyes can only see 1% of the available light spectrum. And there's a lot of things going on around us that we're not looking at, that we can't see, that interact with real science, or real science backs up, or are fundamentally based on real science, which we're going to be talking about today. All things in all universes move according to law, and the law which regulates the movement of the planets is no more immutable than the law which regulates the material expressions of man. One of the greatest of all cosmic laws is that which is responsible for the formation of man as a material being. The main objective is to reveal the workings of the law which connect man the material with man the spiritual. The connecting link between the material man and the spiritual man is the intellectual man, for the mind partakes of both the material and immaterial qualities. The aspirant for higher knowledge must develop the intellectual side of his nature and so strengthen his will that it is able to concentrate all powers of his being and on and in the plane he desires. The great search for light, life, and love only begins on the material plane. Carried to its ultimate, its final goal is completeness with oneness with the universal consciousness. The foundation in the material is the first step, then comes the higher goal of spiritual attainment. Concealed in the words of Thoth are many meanings that do not appear on the surface. Light of knowledge brought to bear upon these tablets will open many new fields for thought. Read and be wise, but only if the light of your own consciousness awakens a deep-seated understanding, which is inherent quality of the soul. So we're going to be going deep, and we're talking a little bit about Thoth because he's the one who taught a lot about the Merkaba and the powers therein, and he utilized the technology in it as well to redevelop the land of Chem after the Great Flood. The universe runs on natural laws. Okay, now these laws exist, just like we have laws to govern ourselves as human beings on this planet, even though some of them aren't really that great. We also have laws as well that govern the universe. And these were known in deep, deep, deep antiquity, not even close to our modern times, what we call modern times right now. Binding immutable conditions that govern the consequences of behavior. General principles of natural law, the principle of mentalism, the principle of correspondence, the principle of vibration, the principle of polarity, the principle of rhythm, the principle of cause and effect, and the principle of gender. We're going to touch on some of these principles today as we get into understanding the whole thing, the whole reason behind this workshop. The first thing we're going to go into is the principle of mentalism. And the principle of mentalism is something that was taught thousands of years ago, over 36,000 years ago. And we're talking about, now we call them the Hermetic principles. They were originally called the Kemetic principles because they come from the land of Chem, where Thoth ruled over for 14,000 years himself. Now these principles start off with mentalism, which is, to me, one of the most important of all of the principles. Why? Because everything in this entire universe is 100% mental. Why? Because we're conscious, and consciousness is the only thing that exists in the third dimension. There is nothing else here. Nothing else exists but consciousness. And what is consciousness? Consciousness is an electromagnetic wave, okay? It's light. All electromagnetic waves are waves of light. We can't see them. When you look at somebody and they're thinking, you can't see the light coming out of them. Well, some of us can, but most of us can't. That light is energetic energy, electromagnetically leaving their skull and going out into the ether of space-time permanently. All is mind. The universe is actually mental. It's as above, so below. So if the universe is conscious, so are we. And our consciousness is a mimic of the original source consciousness. And we ourselves are only just one aspect of the one consciousness. There's only one consciousness that exists, only one. When I'm here talking to you guys, I'm talking to myself. When you're talking to somebody, you're talking to yourself. This goes back to the old adage that you hear in ancient texts and even in the scriptures. It says, treat others as you would want yourself to be treated. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Why does that exist? Because they understood this principle of the mentalism, understanding that there is only one consciousness and we are all just broken off legs and aspects of that one single consciousness, and we're experiencing life from a perspective and transmitting that information back to source. Because why? Source is on a data collection mission. This is what's going on here, guys. If you think about it like this, your brain is encased in complete darkness. It knows nothing. Your brain knows nothing. What happens is your senses are your brain's friends. So your brain says touch, smell, hearing, sight, all your senses, feel. Go out there and collect data. Bring me back some information so I can figure out what's actually going on out there. So the brain sends its friends out, the five senses, and they go out and get all this information. They gather data. Now, the friends themselves don't really know what they're collecting. They're collecting information. They can't even decipher what they're collecting. They have no clue what it is. But they bring this information back to the brain, and that's encased in darkness. They say, here you go. Here's the information you requested. We're doing the same thing with our information, with our lives. We're sending information through a stream we're going to talk about today. The brain takes this data, and then the brain says, okay, boom, I got it now. I figured out, I decoded this information, and then the brain broadcasts a hologram, and then you navigate through this three-dimensional matrix using a hologram created by your brain. That's how you're moving around this realm. You're moving around based off of a projected hologram. That's why collectively we create consciousness. Collectively we create reality, but individually we create our own reality tunnels. So our tunnels, we have a certain amount of control over our tunnels, and our tunnels and our paths cross with others and everything else. But there's a certain amount of control you have over your own tunnel. So today's main goal is to teach you to understand how the thought process works, how it interacts, how it quantum entangles, and how you can control, the majority of your own reality tunnel. I think that's very, very important to understand. Let's talk about memory first. So scientists did an experiment. They took people, and I think it was about 20 people, and they started walking them through a city. I think it was New York City, actually. And they took them through the city just on a casual walk. They didn't tell them what they were supposed to be doing or why they were going for this walk. They just took them for the walk through the city, brought them back to the laboratory. They came back to the laboratory and they started talking to them about, okay, well, tell us what you saw. So they wrote down a few mundane things and tell us what you heard. Some people wrote down a few mundane things, and that was about it. Now, what was interesting, once they put these people under a controlled hypnotism and hypnotize them, got them into a hypnotic state, they then discovered a lot more information. People were able to recall a lot more things that were going on around them. See, your brain is recording everything on a consistent basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All input is permanently recorded in your mind, even though a lot of it you don't know how to access right away, or you don't realize you can access it. It's all there. So the people who were under hypnotism started talking about what they saw in the store windows, jewelry and watches, and what type of brand watches they were. They saw signs on buildings that they would have never thought they saw. They even saw license plate tags and so forth. And they even heard conversations. They were able to recall conversations of other people as they walked by. Because why? All this information is going into you on a consistent basis. All this information is going into the mental consciousness that is stored permanently in your mind, and then also in space-time itself. Let's talk a little bit about the brain. So you heard about the movie The Matrix. Well, the reason why they call Neo, his name Neo, is because of the neocortex. And that's really a very, very important part of the brain. So the neocortex, which is Latin for new bark or new rind, is also called the neophallium, which means new mantle. If you can understand the matrix, you'll get the correlation there. It's a part of the brain in mammals. It's the outer layer of the cerebral hemispheres, and it's made up of 6 layers, labeled 1 through 6, with 6 being the innermost and 1 being the outermost. The neocortex is part of the cerebral cortex, along with the archaeocortex and paleocortex, which are cortical parts of the limbic system. In humans, it is involved in higher functions such as sensory perception, generation of motor commands, spatial reasoning, conscious thought, language, and you thought it was just a name. So you see why they named Neo, and you see every aspect of what Neo was doing in the Matrix movie was utilizing higher functions, waking up to higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of sensory perception. Remember when he was fighting Morpheus, and Morpheus told him, it was defeating him. He said, do you think that that's air that you're breathing? There's levels to understanding our perception of this reality. Generation of motor commands. Morpheus would make Neo jump off of buildings in the Matrix to get him to understand the spatial reality of what the Matrix and what he was in was artificial construction, and how to manipulate and how to maneuver it and how to maneuver around it and how to even bend it to your own will. Amazing stuff. That's why I call the Matrix a documentary. So we're going to talk about how light equals intelligence. A lot of people attribute intelligence to a human being, something that their dog can do. The dog can do some tricks and go get a newspaper and things like that. It's a lot deeper than that. Intelligence is light. Light itself is intelligent. Light itself is intelligent, and every electron that orbits an atom is also intelligent, and we're going to go over that today. The first ever photograph of light, both as a particle and a wave, exists. This is from physics.org. So this is a particle wave duality. So we discovered in science that nothing exists as a solid matter. Okay, there's no solid matter like, this cup, this coffee cup doesn't exist as solid matter that I can physically hold until I consciously observe it, and then it collapses. What is it collapsing out of? Light waves. It's collapsing from light. Everything in the third dimension, this is very important for you to understand. If you're trying to get into this macabre manifestation mindset, you have to understand that everything in the third dimension is made from light. Everything, bar none. There's nothing that exists here except for conscious light. That's it. The atoms that make up this cup exist as electromagnetic wave, a specific frequency of a wave that when collapsed through conscious observation, collapses it into this physical structure that we call a coffee cup, okay? Everything works the same way. As a matter of fact, when you're not home, your house doesn't exist as a solid structure. Your house exists as electromagnetic waves of potentials in superposition of each other. Until you pull back up to the house and you physically know where it's located and you pull back up to it, it then collapses back into a physical structure. Now, it's a physical structure for anybody else observing it when you're not around as well. But because of superposition and because of potentials, it always exists as both lights and as a solid object at the same exact time. A lot to wrap your mind around, but let's have Dr. Quantum walk us through this real quick, a very short video.
So, what they taught us in school isn't really the way it is, and that our senses are playing tricks on us. You just gotta wonder, what is this reality that we find ourselves in? Quantum physics says it's all just waves of information. Do I believe that? I hope so. Yikes! And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So when we throw things, that is matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern. We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter through. We get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they can interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. Physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched. It was here that physicists stepped forever into the strange, never-world of quantum events. What is matter? Marbles or waves? And waves of what? And what does an observer have to do with any of this? The observer collapsed the wave function simply by observing.
Okay. So you see, very interesting, guys. We literally collapse, just like I told you, we collapse things into existence by conscious observation that is observing light waves, electromagnetic waves of light. These light energies are specific frequencies, and everything has a specific frequency. Even the shirt I have on resonates at a specific atomic frequency. That frequency that this electromagnetic wave is will collapse always into this shirt. It's very complicated, but at the same time, it's really very, very simple. And once you wrap your mind around it, the whole world, the whole universe changes for you, because now you're going to understand things on a totally different level than what the average person is understanding. They're just blindly going through this matrix, and you are now becoming a master, an ascended master consciously of what's going on in the matrix. And that's going to give you better discernment and give you the ability to see things before they come, to understand things better and everything else. You can see here, it says on my screen, human beings exist both as solid matter and also as a wave of light. So even a human being is a light being. So when you hear that, light family, family of light, we're light beings, we're beings of light, and we're going to go to 5D. We're already in 5D. Human beings are already multidimensional beings. You are already there. So stop waiting to become multidimensional. Stop waiting to be this 5D experience. You can access it now through consciousness. Because why? Every dimension you go up in consciousness allows you to see other levels down. And you yourself, your avatar body exists as a light wave. Your avatar body exists as a wave of light until you look at it and observe it, or until somebody else looks at it and observes it. Then it collapses back into a physical avatar body again. But you are made of light. If I take an atom and I smash it together, what's going to happen in the atom smasher, in the CERN's atom smasher? I'm going to see light come out of that. If I take beneath even the atomic level and I go into quarks and muons and all these other smaller particles and I smash those together, what am I going to get? I'm still going to get light. That's what I'm going to get, light. So you have to understand that everything that exists in this realm is light. It's a very important part of what I'm teaching today, understanding that everything is light. Solidity is an illusion, okay? Solidity is an absolute illusion.